Come on. Come on.
There we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Module 5 with Dr. Frank Sabatino. I can't believe that we are already at Module 5. It just seems like yesterday we were at Module 1. So we have so many questions that have been sent in, and we're going to get started with them right away. So thanks for showing up, Dr. Frank. We love having you.
Good evening, everybody.
All right. So first question is from Gina. How do you change a cycle of food addiction that you have given into and reinforced from an early age? Is it as simple as one choice at a time? How do you really break this cycle?
It's a question of, it is kind of one choice at a time, because it's about being mindful about what those choices are. I mean, think about this. Many people are making choices all the time. And if you get into the pattern of making certain kinds of choices, they become kind of woven into the tapestry of your brain and nervous system. That becomes the way that becomes kind of your roadmap of behavior. If you want to change something, that new choice has to be given some opportunity to get into the fabric, that tapestry of the nervous system. And that's typically by making a choice that you give a chance to become part of you. That's why when we work on an eating plan like this, where you're getting rid of addictive substances, whether they be salt, oil, sugar, cheese, those kind of things, and now you have new choices that are becoming your day-to-day routine, these new choices get a chance to kind of etch their way. They get woven into your behavior. So over time, you look back, and one of the things that's interesting is you get to a place where when you look back, you can't believe that that's where you once were, even though that's where you once were. So you do need to be patient. You do need to be mindful. You do need to take some time to understand what those choices mean to you and what you're using them for. And then as you make an alternative, you do need to give that new choice an opportunity to thrive. That's why you can't go back to, we've talked about this briefly, but that's why you can't go back to old patterns of behavior, especially in the early stages of change. If you have a problem with alcohol, or you have a problem with the heroin, or you have a problem with sugar, you can't give that person just a little bit of that, because it reinstates the same problem. So there's got to be a combination of almost an abstinence and maybe a creative substitution. You know, fruit may become your sweet. You may make a dessert with fruit, or you may do something that way, and that gives you a new option. But the bottom line is the new choices just have to be able to breathe in the fabric of your nervous system, and they have to have some opportunity of time to do that.
Thank you. Amy asks, in choosing a health retreat with medical support, what would you say is the difference between Balance for Life and True North?
In practice and theory, we're running very similar kinds of programs. Dr. Goldhammer has a more extensive staff of medical practitioners, which do not exist at Balance for Life. But we're running a program that's a little more intimate. I never take more than 5 to 10 or 12 people a week, so that I can individually work with each person. We have very similar screening. You know, we're part of an international association of doctors that have been all trained in fasting care, for example, for the sake of argument. And we have a pretty set standard of care. We evaluate people for candidacy for fasting similarly. We monitor them similarly. I do more hands-on in a way because I'm the sole person there. And, if I need some additional support, I have it. But as a rule, I'd say that part of it is it's smaller, more intimate. Our location is different. We're right on the ocean, and Dr. Goldhammer's place is removed from that. And I have found that to be a very conducive environment for the fasting state, having that ocean air and that ocean environment. But we have a similar non-SOS approach, plant-based, whole food. We have water fasting. I'm doing a lot, I think, hands-on, where Dr. Goldhammer has more of a supportive staff that he delegates responsibilities to. But so they're similar in that regard. But in terms of the location, in terms of the intimacy, I would say our place varies a little bit from what they're doing at that particular place. And other centers, which are smaller, I know Dr. Gershfeld has a smaller place, so he's got a more intimate connection. Dr. Grace in the Midwest, so they're all just a little bit different, but they all come from a similar place, a similar philosophy of how we monitor and how we care for people that are in the fasting state. And the food programs, I assume, I don't know Dr. Gershfeld's as much, but they're all pretty similar in their non-SOS component. And so they vary by the personalities, who you want to be with, who you feel comfortable with, who you have rapport with. All of that comes into play when you're taking care of people in a center. I've been doing this about 40 years, so I've developed a rapport with people in a certain way, and I interact with people in a very personal, up close and personal way, and I like that approach. That's a hands-on approach for me that works for me, and it works for the people that I work with.
Nice. And I think all the three guys you mentioned are all great.
Yeah, they're all exceptional. Look, everybody's been doing this and dedicating their life to doing this over decades and decades of time. So they're all people that have, great insight. They have great care and passion for helping people get well. And that's what you're looking for. It's a question of sometimes, to be honest, sometimes we'll have people on the East Coast and Dr. Goldhammer will tell them, go see Dr. Sabatino. Someone may be out west and they're ready to come to me, and I'll say, you know what, you don't need to travel that far. Go see Dr. Goldhammer or Dr. Gershfeld. So we all feed each other. We all support each other. We know each other a very long time, and we are very tight that way.
Yeah, wonderful. Honeybee asks, can you give us 3 tips for staying strong and maintaining our hard-won weight loss?
Staying strong. The real issue is, finding, number one, making it a priority to do what you know is going to create the outcome that you're looking for. This is very important. What I would urge you to do is I would urge you truthfully to sit down and really write a goal. What is your goal? What is it that you're really trying to achieve in health or weight loss, or what have you achieved? And is there another goal that you want to tie into that? And then think about this. Everything that you choose to do, any goal that you establish, there are going to be choices that lead to you being successful with that outcome. Every choice you and I make has a consequence. So the key is, how are we learning from those consequences? So number one is be very sensitive to what the goal is that you're trying to achieve. And then, like you were developing a company or you were going to try to create a successful company, your body and your weight is your corporation. What is it that you need to do to make that happen? So if you really see that if you go on a certain path and you make a certain choice and the consequences of that action are not leading you to that outcome, you need to reckon with that and say, okay, well, I need to stay on that path where I'm going to walk, I'm going to walk 3-4 times a week for a half hour. That's going to be my goal. That's going to be the thing that I do. So understand the impact, really lock in on the fact that the consequence of that is allowing you to achieve that goal. That's the best way to lock into these choices. Make certain changes with food that you can live with, and make sure that you can stick by that. So the exercise component, the stress component, the food component, take those 3 components and say, what are the consequences of what I'm doing now? Can I do that a little bit better? Is it helping me achieve what I want to achieve? And that way you reclaim the power of your personal choice. And I will guarantee you that by taking that stand, you will continue to evolve forward, and it'll be a lot easier to stay on track than you think it may be right now. I think when we set up battles where we almost feel like we want to go back to old habits, or we feel like we're being deprived of something, the mindset changes when you really own the consequences of your actions and the goals you're trying to achieve. And that's what I would recommend. I mean, it works that way for me. It works that way for anybody I've ever counseled. You have to sometimes put the big boy pants on and say, this is what is going to lead to what I'm trying to achieve. That in itself will help you kind of embrace that choice.
Terrific. Thank you. Mary says, Dr. Sabatino, what are your thoughts on 12-step programs? I've been part of OA, Overeaters Anonymous, with limited success.
Okay. The bottom line is, understand that the 12-step programs were established to deal with some very important things that happen in addiction. One of the hallmark signs of addiction is denial. We talked about this briefly in the 5th module, where I made the point that the definition of addiction that exists right now, a simple definition, is that the compulsive or continuous use of a substance or a behavior without regard for negative consequences. There's a denial of negative consequence. That denial is important. And the other piece is what we call isolation. And we tend to do these things almost hidden from view. And so 12-step programs are really bringing in a sense of community. So is it mandatory? No, but as part of the real treatment of addiction, having this idea of addressing the social and psychological factors that trigger your compulsive or addictive use is important. So the 12 steps are set up by acknowledging that we need help, and sometimes we need to acknowledge that. They talk about a higher power, but that can be the power of a group, that can be the power of your family support, it could be anything. Anything where you acknowledge that you need support and outside help. Then we talk about the fact that you're making amends for behaviors and relationships and things that went on and looking at how you can make those changes. And the end step is a very important step too, because as you get toward the end, it's all about as you improve the quality of your life and deal with your compulsive use and addiction, how can you help others with a similar problem? So I like the 12-step programs. I don't think they're a be-all and end-all. I think what happens, though, is for the longest time, in addiction work, they were focusing on just the psychosocial and emotional component, spiritual component, and they were overlooking the biochemical and physiological. We now know that in the brain reward cascade, there's a pattern of nutrient use, there's a pattern of activity and stress component that affects that chemical cascade. So if you combine the physiological in terms of the nutritional support, the things we're talking about, with the psychosocial and some spiritual support, the results are significantly better. So I think 12-step programs have value, but you just can't go at them alone. You've got to work with the kinds of food choices we've talked about. You've got to work with that mindfulness that we talked about. And you've got to give yourself a chance to literally break the physical addictive components of certain things you're eating and doing that now you have to address. So if you do the big picture, I think the success is greater. When people were first doing 12 steps only, the failure rate in addiction was off the charts. I think I read at some point that people that just did 12 step in the old days, there can be as much as an 80% failure rate for people with addiction going through 12-step programs. But when you combine them with what we now know about brain reward cascade in food and nutrients and sometimes even supplementation to help that, the results are significantly better.
Great. You know, some of the food addiction programs, though, they also insist on weighing and measuring your food. I don't find that very sustainable for people that eat a calorically dilute diet.
No, it's not. And generally speaking, I think they're doing that because they're just trying to bring in a component, another component of a kind of a rigid way to kind of get you focused. But again, I agree. When you're living and eating the way we're recommending, that's not an issue that has to be really adhered to or worked with that way. And again, embracing what we've spoken about, I think will be a tremendous adjunct if you're really trying to work through an addictive thing. And if you even decide to go to 12-step, having the kinds of foods and the dietary pattern we're recommending is a tremendous benefit in that approach.
Great. Kathy says the question regarding chocolate, do we get the same reaction from natural cocoa that might be used in baking?
As opposed to what? As opposed to, you mean raw chocolate versus processed? I don't understand.
I'm not sure. I mean,
well, let's think about it this way. Yeah, the bottom line is, I tell people, if you're going to eat chocolate, eat raw, unsweetened chocolate. It is so bitter and alkaloid, you won't eat more than the amount that could fit on the head of your pinky, probably.
Right.
And so what happens is most of the chocolate that people have is sweetened. It's also got sometimes milk or dairy added to it. So in many ways, you're not really eating chocolate. You're eating this doctored up, processed, refined chocolate with all these other additives. So look, we don't recommend chocolate as a major part of the diet in any way, shape, or form, but people are going to eat it at times, and I tell them, if you are going to do that, then make sure it's more of a raw cacao without all of that other stuff added, and you'll find much better balance with it.
Yep. So this is not a question, but a comment from Etta. I just want to thank you both for an outstanding program. I learned so much more, even though I've been whole food plant-based since January 2011. I live in Walnut Grove, Arizona, out in the countryside. Great place to get and stay healthy. Thank you, Etta, for your kind comment. I appreciate it, and I'm sure Dr. Frank does as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Some of these are just so long. I get to them, but I like to do the shorter ones first.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these are from different weeks. I try to get all the week 5, but they don't always happen. Yeah. Okay. This is from Alice, who I believe is watching live from the UK. Just a great big thank you. SOS free, exclusively plant-based is the greatest blessing, and hearing to go to sleep at 10. This is all for listening to repeatedly. You two change the world for a better place. Thank you, Alice. We love these kind comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Cindy, who I also believe is watching live, says, can you help me understand why I get up about 3 to 5 times a night to use the bathroom? I only drink water during the day. If you drink water in the evening, and I was just wondering, is there anything that could help stop interrupting my sleep like this?
This is Cindy. I don't know Cindy's age. I don't know if she's perimenopausal or menopausal or older. Sometimes there can be, in the menopausal time after perimenopause, a little prolapse where the bladder can actually kind of drop a bit, and there can be more urgency and frequency. This diet tends to be much more water-based, and again, I don't know how late she eats at night. Sometimes there can be fluid that is accumulating through the day, and she just has sometimes a issue with frequency and urgency that may relate to the actual physiology of the bladder or the amount of fluid that's coming in the diet that the body needs to evacuate at night. So if there's nothing else wrong with kidney or bladder, or she's done a urinalysis and there's no irritation or UTI or whatever, my advice is not knowing her age. If it was a little bit of prolapse, sometimes doing things like Kegel exercises and things of that nature may help a little bit. I would eat, again, my final meal, quite a bit away from sleep time. And she's already drinking water earlier in the day, so that's a help. And I'm assuming she's not using any alcohol or anything of that nature, because that would also promote more urination. So without any more information, that's really all I can say about that.
Okay. Cindy says she's 60 years old and is done eating by 7 at the latest.
Okay. Yeah, I think she's got a little bit of prolapse. I think the bladder probably has. And is she getting any urgency or frequency during the day? Because that nighttime pattern should be reflected sometimes a little bit in the daytime pattern. Because if that's really the case, then there'll be more urgency and frequency at other times, not just during sleep times. I'm just hoping that she can getting up to urinate is not the end of the world, as long as you can get back to sleep. That's really the issue. And I don't know what time she's going to bed, but I would try to finish meals maybe closer to between 5 and 6 and see if there's any urination that happens before she can go to bed. That may help in not having to get up during the night.
Okay, great. Okay. Charlotte says, I'm soon to be 60 and have been told by my doctor that strength training can improve arthritis and strengthen my bones. Will Pilates also have the same effect? Because I'm also concerned with balance and flexibility.
Pilates will have some of that effect, but it's not going to be as resistant as adding some additional weight to those bones. And so getting the increase in muscle mass that will happen with some consistent weight training, I think, is really something you want to add to the Pilates work that you're also doing. Pilates is great for lengthening. It's great for core strength. It's great for a number of things. But I think at 60, as I mentioned in the module we talked about on exercise, I would recommend doing some additional strength training 2 or 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, because it will generally affect the strength of soft tissue around the joints. As far as arthritis, the inflammation of the joints is going to be much more a byproduct of dietary intake, stress, and other things. But the exercise will definitely improve bone health. It will improve circulation around the attachments of muscles to bones and joints. And so all of that will be somewhat beneficial. I think there's just a benefit. I would add the weight training to the Pilates training.
Okay. Cindy said that she goes to bed between 8 and 9. Cindy, the one with the bladder. I guess everybody has a bladder, but
Oh, and she goes to bed 8 or 9. What time does she get up? That's going to bed really early. Wow, good for her.
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't gone to bed 8 or 9 o'clock at night in my life since probably I was in grammar school.
Wow. Cool. All right. So let's, here we go. Olivia asks, what is your thought on adaptogenic sparkling water with 20 milligrams for stress, but it has GMO glycerin in it? Is that bad? Is that, please help, or even the LaCroix drink?
I don't recommend any flavored or waters with a lot of additives. We're just looking, again, we mentioned this briefly before. We just want water that's, slightly neutral to slightly alkaline, just plain H2O. All the mineral content in your diet is really designed to come in the food that you're eating. I mean, think about this. It would be like if you look at dirt that plants are growing in, they have mineral content, but we can't eat the dirt to get that mineral content. It's limited. It would hurt the kidney. So the plants are the go-between. They take that up. We eat the plants, and now we're able to absorb those organic minerals a lot more successfully. We have this notion that stuff has to be put in our water, and that's really not the best way to take in nutrients. We're urging you to eat this broad spectrum of really mineral-rich and vitamin-rich foods. Just make sure your water is as plain H2O as you can. Nothing needs to be added to it, or at least that's not anything that I would recommend.
Yeah. Good. Frank says, garlic, cayenne pepper, onions, vinegar. Some say very beneficial. Others say they're an irritant and poison.
Wow. Okay. I don't think we need to go that extreme. I think there's an element of quantity related to those things. We know, for example, garlic has some great material in it, allicin and other antioxidants, that it's got value. It can be somewhat anti-inflammatory in the body. Cayenne and hot peppers, yeah, there is an issue about those, that they could perhaps irritate the mucus lining of things. And so using those in large amounts, I would go against. If you've got reflux and things of that nature, sometimes those foods can aggravate that, can irritate that. So we're looking to keep things relatively mild, but the use of things like garlic and other herbs and things really can enhance flavors and can be used quite successfully without a lot of irritation. I just think that the things that are very hot and spicy are going to be things that you want to be a little bit more careful with.
Right. And by the way, Cindy gets up at 5.
Yeah,
Denise?
Cindy gets a good night's sleep. I got to give her that.
Yeah.
I'm glad she does, and I'm hoping that she can fall back to sleep once she gets up. But I got to believe that some of that urinary pattern may be part of a little bit of prolapse that happens in that menopausal time.
Yep. Denise says, can you please talk about dark leafy greens and vitamin K and blood thinners? I hear people on blood thinners say they can't eat anything green while they're consuming copious amounts of junk food. Thank you. These modules have been fabulous.
I know it is kind of funny when you think about that, because that's usually what happens. They say, oh, I can't eat that good stuff, and they're eating all kinds of other junk. The discussion has been, and now you have blood thinners that are not affected by that, things like Xarelto and things like that you don't even do prothrombin times. You don't have to check clotting times because they're not necessary and they're not affected by greens. So I would tell people, if they had to be on clotting meds, make sure they get on one with their doctor where that's not even a discussion. But the fact of the matter is, if you've been eating a lot of greens and your body is adjusted to greens, there is some suggestion that going on a blood thinner, it's not going to change. It's not going to be that affected by that. If you're going someone who was never really eating this way, and then you go on this blood thinner, and now you go into high levels of that, there could be some issue with clotting time. But my feeling is right now there's so many options with clot anticoagulant meds that do not involve worrying about green consumption, and that's all I would recommend. Get on one of those.
Great. So here's a question, and it says, how do we know that the set point is changing? I feel like things have stalled. McDougall has maximum weight loss. Are there things we can do to push moving our set point in a healthy way? Or are some people just stuck at a higher set point even when eating an SOS-free whole food plant-based diet? For instance, should we limit fruit for a short time, or is this just one huge experience of patience?
Yeah, it is one huge experience of patience in a way, because there is going to be a time factor for recovery. Think about how long in your own personal life, AJ, it took to maintain that weight that you lost. You said 27 months or something in that regard. Most people are looking for the quick fix, and you will get weight loss. I mean, you come into a program, I got people that just came to my place in 2 weeks, they've lost between 10 and 15 pounds, several people. But again, to maintain that, to continue that, you've got to lock in on these approaches, because set point is something that's really establishing a thermostat in the body. It's looking at calories in, calories out, the body's adjusting that, and that's going to be affected by food choices. It's going to be affected by muscle mass and metabolism. It's going to be affected by your sleeping pattern and the stress that we talked about. So when you think about that, all of those pieces conspire over a period of time to create a lower set point that makes you more calorie efficient, meaning that you're burning calories more effectively than storing them, let's say, for the sake of argument. And in that dance, let's face it, it's never one straight stairway to heaven. Everything in the body moves like waveform. So there's going to be times when you're at a good place, you're losing weight consistently, and then it may stabilize for a period of time. But that's the time where you hold your ground and allow the system to catch up with the kinds of changes and things you're making. Activity usually will help that. Weight training, like we talked about, will improve that, will lower that set point, make you more calorie efficient, make you even want to consume more calories. You'll find appetite will go up, and you're going to even use those calories more successfully. So again, I don't know where your final set point will be, what the maximum weight loss pattern is for any one person, but you will get to that point over a period of months to years and realize where that is. I can change my weight by tidying things up a little bit, but it pretty much hovers around a certain place when I'm really right on over a long period of time. So my advice is, don't fight that. Use that. Create a healthy lifestyle, health on every level that you can, and then you'll accept where that is, but hold your ground, because it will take a period of months to years to reestablish a new set point after it's been established over the years that you established it before. And yes, there is a certain amount of patience for the time factor of recovery of that set point, but it will change. And things like fasting help that. Detoxification programs can trigger some of that. And all of it, as long as you come back to embracing that low calorie dense model without all the added salts and oils and sugars, your body is going to achieve the place that it needs to for you. And that's going to be really the final, determining factor.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Where did that question go? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Connie says, the presentation was so powerful for me. I have chosen to be a plant-based consumer for years, but still struggle with my weight and body image. The set point and self-esteem information presented gives me hope and inspiration to really think about what my goals are and to take consistent and goal congruent steps to get there. I'm putting on my big girl pants today. Have always had them, was just hoping for a quick fix, I guess. Thank you for this talk. I'm really going to miss you in these presentations. One more thing. Every week you have spoken with a picture behind you. What is that image? It feels a little menacing. Not a member of the Diet Squad, is it? Thanks to you and Chef AJ, who provided us with this opportunity to hear you. So
that picture was a picture of Albert Einstein, one of my great idols. What that is, believe it or not, that is done on a wooden block with contact paper that we used to line our drawers with in cabinets. There's an artist I know from New Jersey actually takes a photograph and does does it in contact paper on a wood block. And she gave me two of the people that I really like. If you saw another corner of my room, I have one of Jimi Hendrix. So I have Jimi Hendrix and Albert Einstein, two people that I like having around me.
That's cool. I love it.
And Big Al, believe it or not, was a staunch vegan.
Nice.
He was a plant-based dude, and he was very cool. So he's one of the people that I really admire and look up to and wish would have met to have a conversation with them for sure.
Okay. This is a little long, but I'm going to read it from Rebecca. Thank you for all the incredible information you are teaching us. I'm learning so much. I'm 48 and I eat a 95% whole food plant-based diet, exercise, and visualize, meditate, breathe daily, and constantly work on my inner world. Thank God I am healthy, thin, and have lots of energy and feel great. I was blessed with a large family and play many roles. I only seem to be able to sleep around 5 hours as I naturally wake up between 4 and 5 a.m., which I love. I get so much done when the world is asleep. I try so hard to get to bed by 10, but something or someone always seems to come up and it gets closer to 11. I don't sit most of the day, so I am fine, but if I sit for a lecture or drive long distances, I nod off unless I eat or drink. I am concerned for my long-term health and aging. My menstrual cycle completed more than a year ago, and I have quite a number of gray hairs. Thank God. I seem to have gone through menopause without all the negative symptoms. Is 5 hours too little for long-term health, even though I am feeling energized? I do sleep a little longer on Friday nights and get about 7 to 8 hours. Thank you in advance. If she's falling asleep while driving, that doesn't sound
No,
good.
that's not good. I mean, I would tell you that if you get up in the morning and you're able to do your day at a fairly energetic level, I wouldn't balk about the 5 hours, although we know that we want it to be closer to 6 to 8 for adults for sure, and probably 7 or so is more natural and normal. But there are short and longer sleepers. There's no question about that. I'm just a little concerned that from what you're saying, that for the most part you're okay. But if you start nodding off when you're driving and all of that, then my advice would be that you're going to need to take some kind of rest or a little bit of a nap time in that daytime. And there may be the need for a little siesta or a little bit of a meditative process or a 20 to 30 minute lay down or a put down. I would be concerned about your health if that's the case. The long-term effects, we have no idea what all of those will necessarily be. I think you're doing a lot of things that are really good. I would try to get that period of time where you can back up that sleep maybe closer to that 10. I don't know what those distractions are, but I would try to get that, because if you even get from 10 to 4 or 5, you're back to 6 or 7 hours, and I think you'll feel more energized. So getting up early, I have no problem with. I just think that you want to try to get closer to that 6 to 7, and I'm just concerned that, as you mentioned, that you may be nodding off at times that can put you in jeopardy, and that's not a good thing.
Or other people in jeopardy, because I don't want to be on the road when she's falling
That's the other
asleep.
people, yeah, harming yourself and others. You're right.
Right. Exactly. Karen says, hello, I'm 63, menopause, full hysterectomy at 30, take estrogen patch twice a week, exercise 6 to 7 times a week, have difficulty waking around 3 and back to sleep at 6. I do not get out of bed. I do breathing exercise, but rarely go back to sleep until 6. Any suggestions?
Well, I think what you're doing is what you have to do. The waking up pattern, again, there are other apps and things that may help that a little bit. But generally speaking, the activity in the day is helpful. Winding down behavior at night, we talked about taking a really hot bath, magnesium bath, a little bit of Epsom salt. All of that can cause a real deeper relaxation at bedtime that may get you further through that. The waking up pattern, I know she gets back to sleep. That's an awful long time to wake up, though. 3 hours is a long time. I'm having a hard time believing that she just lays there for 3 hours. I don't know what else you get up and do. I would try to avoid a lot of creative activity at that time. I would just focus again on just bringing my energy down with a little bit of that very mindful breath meditation. If you have to put on some white noise music or something like that, sometimes that can be helpful in certain apps. And I'm hoping that you're not eating anything provocative, in the evenings. I'm assuming you're eating a diet similar to what we're talking about. But again, I would make sure you're active in the daytime, getting good physical activity, and making sure there's no alcohol or anything like that in the evening hours, and see if that makes any difference. But again, when you go back to sleep at 6, I don't know what time you're getting up, and I don't know exactly what time you're going. What time did she say she's going to bed?
I don't think she said what time.
Yeah,
She didn't say what time she's going to bed.
The key is if she's able to get, again, within all of that dance a good 6 hours at least, then, I mean, we're not going to worry much about it. And I know she's concerned because she's waking up at the same time every night. And again, I don't know what else is on her mind. I don't know what's provoking, if there's anything on a level where she's working through whatever stressful events. So I would try to do some stress management stuff and activity in the day and see where that leads into the nighttime pattern.
Okay, thank you. Whoops, wrong thing. Okay. Okay, so last week you said there's no such thing as night owls. And so Cynthia said, regarding morning larks versus night owls, please look at Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, as well as the following article. There are, in fact, night owls. So if you want, I can just forward you this article if you want to.
Well, I'm going to tell you that there are no night people. In all due respect to Matthew, because we've looked at this over a very long period of time, the truth of the matter is we've created morning larks and we've created night owls. That doesn't mean that they're naturally part of the human population. We can do a lot of things. We've been trained ourselves. Look, there are times in my own life with children and so on where I trained myself to stay up late at night, and then you become more adapted to that pattern. That doesn't make it in your best interest, though. And so the point is that we are truly diurnal animals by nature. And the more we get into understanding the nighttime pattern and working with those night dark cycles, the rhythms, we've been so disengaged from so many natural rhythms that occupy and are part of who we are as human beings. And we've bought into the fact that because they become disengaged, or we've become disengaged, or they become a part of our lives, that they're natural for us. Not really the case. And so I would still argue that the bottom line is are you getting the rest that we're talking about? Are you getting that 6 to 8 hours? The data is very strong that when you're not, there are compromises in health that occur. And so the bottom line is, and you'll see this with college students too, they can be up all night, sleep all day, wake up tired and exhausted, sleeping 12 hours a day. And so my feeling is the more you can get closer to that cycle, and that to me is we're looking at from 10 o'clock at night to 4 or 5 in the morning. And if you're going to stay up later, you know, if you're going to bed at 11, and I'm a culprit with this because I've created this in my own life in certain ways, when from the time that I, raised a lot of children, and the nighttime was my time. So I tried to stay up longer, and I created a nighttime pattern, but it's not really what's conducive to people. And usually with those patterns, the craving for things and the way insulin and these other hormones work can be affected and make it more difficult to stay on eating patterns that are helpful. And so I would argue that I would still work on trying to entrain a more typical light-dark cycle pattern of behavior if you can.
Karen's saying she's in bed at 10:30, wakes up at 9 a.m. Her doctor indicates lack of estrogen, but she cannot tolerate more estrogen.
She's sleeping 11 hours. Is that what you're saying to me?
No, but remember, she's up at from 3 to 6. She's got that 3 hour.
Back to bed 6 to 9. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, but the hormonal stuff is part of it. But you said there are estrogen patches, and there's only so much of estrogen that you really want to take. But that is true. When women get perimenopausal or menopausal and estrogen levels decline, there can be disturbances in sleep patterns. But I didn't address it because she said she was having hormone replacement. So is it possible that it's so low? The only way to know that is in your blood work. You would see where the estrogen levels are, and you can see where that sits for her. But I agree with her. You have to be careful because you don't want to start taking a lot of outside forms of estrogen, because then you can increase the risk of other factors like potential breast cancer or ovarian changes, which you don't want to do if you can avoid it.
Great. Charlotte says, in Module 4, you made a connection between the adrenal gland fatigue and coldness. I've always thought of myself as cold-natured because no matter where I am, work, home, church, I feel colder than other people. My iron saturation and ferritin serum levels are low, but this has been a recent occurrence that I'm working on by eating more iron-rich foods like beets and spinach. But your comment led me to believe that it's adrenal related. It's a big issue for me because I seem to eat or crave coffee more because I'm cold. Can you please elaborate on the connection between coldness and the adrenal glands?
No, she misunderstood it. That's not the connection I made, unfortunately. I made the connection between feeling sensitivity to cold and low thyroid, not adrenal. And so we made the point that adrenal and thyroid are affected by chronic stress over time. But the point is that when you have sensitivity to cold, that can also be associated with more easier weight gain, hair falling out. Those are thyroid symptoms, not adrenal. So that was a misunderstanding.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe I didn't convey it well enough, but no, it's not related to adrenal function. It's related to thyroid function. And to go back to the coffee and all that, the truth of the matter is that coffee is you craving for stimulation. There can be a low adrenal function too. We made the point that the adrenal and thyroid kind of work in tandem for balancing energy and dealing with stressful events. And so it's very possible that there can be some low hypoadrenia. And in that state, you're going to have those periods where the body's just looking for stimulation. And caffeine and coffee is a stimulant that many people use to deal with that kind of exhaustion. But we've got to find a better way to do that because it only reinforces that stimulation and then that depression cycle, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Lisa asks, do you recommend a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid for a 75-year-old plant-based SOS-free thin woman who's having some memory issues? If not, any suggestions?
Well, believe it or not, there's the data on looking at omega-3s related to memory is actually pretty poor science. It's not much that shows that there. I would still recommend that the omega-3 levels of the body be adequate, but that's done with a handful of walnuts, there's some of the greens, and things like seeds like flaxseed or hemp seed. So I told people, we talked about in the module, taking a tablespoon or two of really good organic ground golden flax on oatmeal or wherever you want to put it will give the body a chance to get the alpha-linolenic acid that it needs, which is the primary daddy of the omega-3 family. And then from that, it will enzymatically produce the longer chain fatty acids, omega-3s like EPA and DHA. So I would say, yes, I would still incorporate those in the diet, but there's not a lot sticking out that's really affecting cognitive benefit remarkably in the big picture of the scientific data. So, for the while there, it was like, oh yeah, load up on DHA, it's going to prevent Alzheimer's. That's not what we're seeing. But it is anti-inflammatory. It will help stabilize a lot of function, and it will, provide the balance that we need because those essential fatty acids are critical for health of the nervous system, health of the neurological system. So yes, it's still beneficial to do that. But there's not a direct connection between that and cognitive loss. But I will tell you that we do know in science that the domain of a wide range of lifestyle factors can help that. And that, of course, includes everything from improving physical activity, lowering body weight. The weight loss itself is a factor that will reduce cognitive dissonance and Alzheimer's outcome. We know about alcohol. We know about chronic stress. So many of the lifestyle factors that we've addressed in these modules are things that not only will promote weight loss, but they will improve brain function. They will improve heart function. They will improve many other systems. That's the beautiful thing, that when you're using a program like we're recommending, that is a healthy weight loss approach. It's interesting that it promotes health of the body on many other levels. That's the bonus, the benefit of doing what we're talking about. You get many rewards for committing to the kind of program that we've recommended.
Great. We seem to be hearing live from a lot of people that are having sleep trouble. Joni says, I am sleepless as well, totally whole food plant-based, fall asleep by 9, wake up between midnight and 1 a.m., up for 3 to 4 hours, maybe fall asleep for an hour, up at 5 to 6 in the morning, desperate for sleep, perfect blood work, no meds other than 75 milligrams of thyroid.
Again, she's on thyroid meds, which obviously is a low thyroid situation. I would probably go to bed just a little bit later. I would try that. I mean, seriously. I would just do, again, I know she's tired at 9. But the bottom line is, if she's going to bed at 9 and waking up at 1, that's already 4 solid hours. She wakes up for a little bit, goes back, it's another few hours. And there are people that have those disrupted patterns without knowing everything going on in terms of what is the stress component of her life, how is she dealing with that. I would do the things we've talked about. I would maybe push the sleep back maybe an hour to 10 o'clock. Get that really hot bath, get into a good breathing activity, yoga nidra, or an application online that allows you to get into some kind of app and see where that takes that sleeping pattern. Again, she can be dealing with hormonal disruption, again, even related to things like reproductive hormones, things of that nature can affect that. The body will even find a set point with those hormones where it may sleep better again later on in years. We don't know that. So some of that may even change over time. But I would have to look at all of that. And again, I would get very vigorous in my physical activity.
Right. That's the thing. I'm wondering, Dr. Frank, I mean, I don't want to like call people out, but I know some of these people and I don't know that they're getting really any exercise at all, let alone vigorous exercise every day.
The activity has to be consistent. And as you get older, it's got to be really consistent because the neurological system and the transmitter pool that's going to produce the transmitters of sleep can be quite affected and improved by physical activity. So if you're not doing that, I would urge you to do it in the way we define that in that exercise module. About 30 minutes, about 5 times a week, 150 minutes, couple of days a week, 30 minutes of weight training. Get that into the system. Get that going. That can make a huge difference. And then make sure that you're not having any stimulants or alcohol in the evening hours. Make sure there's no chocolate or anything like that, in the evening hours or even in the early afternoon hours. Try that with the hot bath. Do all of those pieces we tried and see where it takes you.
Great. Okay. Who is this? My phone is freezing. Come on. Okay. Doha says, I liked your point about the effect of stress in its relation to sleep quality. My question is this: if for several days, due to my busy schedule, I didn't get my 6 to 8 hours sleep, is it okay to have a vigorous exercise, running, and weight training program, or will it have the opposite effect?
No, I mean, that's going to really depend on his energy. If you're feeling exhausted and all of that, I wouldn't try to overdo. But if there's some energetics and you're feeling that without coffee and stimulants, because understand this, sometimes we will have those periods where you're not sleeping and you're in a project or whatever, and then you may be sleep deprived, and then the body, when you give it a shot, will just kind of go into deep sleep for several days and try to catch up on some of that. So my feeling is, yes, we'll have those periods. The question is it something that's an ongoing pattern over a very long period of time, or is it just a temporary pattern that happens when you're busy? To answer your question, I base that on how energetic you are, and if you're really feeling exhausted or tired, that's telling you need to rest more than push a lot of activity. But if you have some energy and you're able to be active, then I would do that, and it probably would reestablish the sleeping pattern a little bit better for you.
Mm-hmm. Joni, who was the one that was waking up 3 to 4 hours between 12 and 1, says she's 69 and does 30 to 40 minutes a day on the bike.
Okay. Again, that may be hormonal related. That may be very estrogen and hormonally related. That's not going to change that. I mean, there may be a time where that changes a little bit, but I would do some of the behaviors that we have talked about in terms of working with the breathing pattern, working with a de-stressing pattern that allows you to use meditation. We made the point that doing the meditative process can improve sleep quality by over 150%, huge increases in energetics and sleep quality, improving dramatically with a meditative process. So I would bring that in, and if you're having disturbances with sleep, I would do that morning and evening. I would have some meditative process that allows everything to downshift and see where it takes you. You have nothing to lose by doing that.
Yep. I am 30 years old, and due to a severe case of endometriosis I had for 10 years, I did a total hysterectomy at the age of 29. My doctor is urging me to take HRT for estrogen, but I read the side effects and they are awful. Is there a natural way to relieve hot flashes without using HRT?
The problem is you created premature menopause by doing that, so you're going through everything that any woman would go through with perimenopause or menopause. It will definitely change on its own because the body will try to readjust even estrogen production through things like the adrenal gland. But there may be the need for some low dose hormone replacement in the process of that extreme change that happened abruptly. Now, there are more natural forms. There are more bioidentical forms that are easier on the body than doing the typical Premarin or horse-derived steroids. So you may want to discuss that with a functional med person, and you may want to get on a naturally derived bioidentical form of hormone replacement term at a low dose just to get you through that period of change. And that's something that you may want to consider.
Nice.
That's an abrupt change to have that kind of an operation at that age. And so, the cycle, your body was put into that tizzy by doing that, in a sense. And so now the hormonal system's in a flurry trying to compensate for you at a very young age. So you're going to need probably a little bit of support just to calm things down a little bit.
Great. Trish says, I used to weigh 175 pounds many years ago and have been on so many diets ever since then. It's unbelievable. I now weigh 105 pounds and have eaten plant-based to lose the weight. My problem is now that I am older, I seem to hold on to weight more than ever. I have counted calories until I'm blue in the face and I am always hungry. That was until I started eating volume and calorie dense. I think she might mean calorie dilute, as AJ has suggested. My fear is that I am eating too much and I don't want to gain. The good thing is that I'm no longer starving and that finally feels so good and I am not counting calories, but I am so scared I'm going to gain. I do eat the same things every day and I like that, salads with baked sweet potatoes, which I love, but I sometimes eat 2 sweet potatoes and maybe 3 if I'm hungry for lunch and dinner, and I do eat a sweet potato for breakfast. I love it that I am finally full, but I so don't want to gain weight and I'm so tired of worrying about everything and every calorie I put in my mouth. I don't know what I should do. I threw away my scale, so I'm not sure if I'm gaining, but I do feel heavier. I hear that a lot from a lot of the women.
Okay. They need to hang out with you a little longer, I think, and watch you eat a few days. The bottom line is what's happened is she's adjusted and entered into this eating plan that will emancipate her from dieting, but never left the mindset associated with everything she did before. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's still that mentality that I've got to deprive to feel comfortable. I've got to eat less because I'm eating too much. My feeling is I think it's time to just relax. I think it's time to just continue to work out, eat your food, eat slowly, try to eat the greens and veggies, make those the fill-in food rather than feeling you have to eat another 6 potatoes. Have a couple of, right now, if you're feeling heavier, stay with the few potatoes that you're having and make the salad and green part, the part that we know is going to have the lowest calorie density, make that more voluminous and let that fill you up a little bit more. Or have a piece of fruit or something in between. Do whatever you can to stay with the low calorie dense stuff, but you've got to allow yourself to relax a little bit. You're creating so much stress again, and without a scale, it's even worse because now you're just guessing that you're getting heavy, and now you're just assuming that you are, and then going into this whirlwind, this roller coaster of madness. And I'm just telling you, just lighten up. Just lighten up with yourself. You can tell by how your clothes are fitting what's going on. You'll know, you can see things when you look in the mirror. You've looked at your body long enough. My feeling is you can do all of that if you need to. Don't allow yourself to get so nutty with every small minutia of this on a day-to-day basis. And if you're coming into this low calorie dense, high volume of greens, just stay with that. And if you want to back off the more, the starchier veggies just a little bit, you can do that. Instead of eating 3 potatoes, so you have to, load up on your salads, get starchier veggies in the salad a little bit, some beets, carrots, whatever you need to put in there. That's going to be a little bit more, a little bit oomphy. And the bottom line is just let it go and then work out, do your thing, and see where your clothes are, where you're at. But try to free yourself from getting lost into that deprivational model, because I'm hearing you on this roller coaster, this kind of treadmill of, again, bringing an old model of deprivation and calorie counting into a model of eating that doesn't require it and actually is really freeing you from it.
Yeah. Thanks. Karen in New Jersey says, walk 3.5 miles over the course of my day. This is an average day for me as I commute and walk around the city. Is this enough aerobic activity?
If it's nonstop, I mean, if you're not stopping and going and stopping and going, you're still getting a number of steps down. I just think there's a value in having the continuity of the activity over a period of time without breaks. And again, if you're in a city like New York or cities of that ilk where you're walking all the time, you are getting activity. So I'm not knocking it. I think that's great. I think it's a great thing. I just think that we want to have it, if you can, without phones, without all the interruptions, more of a constant kind of steady gait that allows you to get that good 20, 30 minutes in without stopping and without interruption. And I think that is another value to that.
Okay, good. Where did that question go? Trying to ask them in the order they were received. Okay, here we go. Nope, that's not it. Okay. From Sheila, I'm 50 years old and overweight. I have been on a plant-based diet for a little over a year and a half. I have only lost 30 pounds in this amount of time. When I visited my doctor, she said my progesterone is too low and my estrogen is too high. I've been taking 100 milligrams of progesterone with 5,000 international units of vitamin D3 at night and 100 micrograms of levothyroxine, 10 micrograms of liothyronine in the morning for my thyroid. I understand that estrogen is stored in fat. Because I am overweight, my estrogen levels will remain higher than my progesterone. Should I be taking progesterone? Is there something more natural I can take until my weight goes down? I feel like my weight loss is very slow. Does my weight loss slow because of the difference in estrogen progesterone levels, or does this have to do with my thyroid? What should I be tested for, and how do I get my medication levels lowered, if not completely get off them?
Well, first of all, there's more? Okay, good.
Okay, you all deal with insulin, but so little is talked about estrogen, progesterone, and thyroid hormones. Can you help me, please?
Yeah, we alluded to the thyroid story a little bit. And the fact of the matter is, it sounds like the thyroid was something that was going on over a very long period of time and was not probably dealt with effectively. The bottom line is you're focusing on estrogen and progesterone. Remember, there's another hormone that's active in women too, and that's testosterone. And that is not even discussed in this story, because I would even look at that and see where that testosterone level is also. Testosterone is going to be involved with weight loss, bone health, a number of different things, muscle growth. And so, look, the bottom line is some women are hyperestrogen, some women are not. If the progesterone is below normal limits, and it's significantly below normal limits, there may be the reason to do a little wild yam supplement or a progest. But again, I don't like playing around with reproductive hormones a lot, because you end up creating risk factors sometimes in the system where you're getting abnormal growth of tissue, whether it's in the uterus, the ovary, the breast, or whatever. And so she needs to monitor that. And she said she's eating plant-based. I didn't hear that she was eating non-SOS plant-based. So I don't know if that's the case. And I know that that's going to make a difference too. The activity level needs to be very strong and consistent. And that's another piece. And so all of these pieces have to really be looked at. And so, yeah, estrogen and progesterone ratio can have an impact. Estrogen usually, when it's higher, leads to a weight gain pattern that is more related to a certain physiological kind of weight gain, which is usually around hips and thighs. If her hips and thighs are where she's depositing a lot of weight, that's probably more of an estrogen-related weight gain. If she's getting abdominal weight gain, that's more of a cortisol-induced weight gain. So depending on the pattern of weight gain, you can also get a little bit of a picture of the pattern of the hormonal relationship. But it sounds like the thyroid was something that was very involved, and that needs to be monitored over time. And that will tell her when and if she's able to cut back on any of those meds. Progest I would only do if it's really low, and again, you'd have to look at the ratio. There is something called DHEA, which is the precursor to all of those hormones. I would even measure that, because if that's low, supplementing that may help the body create balance with these other hormone outcomes. So DHEA can be done on a routine test. So I would look at keep monitoring the estrogen, progesterone, look at the testosterone, monitor the thyroid, make sure that's in balance, and even do the DHEA test. Make sure it's non-SOS, vegan, plant-based, and we'll go from there.
Nice. Tammy says, Dear Dr. Frank, with respect to getting the right micronutrients and consumption of meat, I always get tears in the corner of my mouth when I don't eat meat for a week or so. I always think it's B12 deficiency, and I think I need a schnitzel. Then I live in Germany. What do you think the problem might be? And if indeed B12, what is a natural source other than meat? I don't think we as humans were meant to take B12 tablets. Thank you. Love the program so far.
Well, the bottom line is that a lot of cracks and things like that can relate to B vitamin changes, and it may not just be B12. It may be B vitamins across the board. Sometimes that's also a pattern where you're depleting things under stress. You're depleting B vitamins, you're depleting C. And so generally speaking, eating a broad base of all the green foods like we recommend are really the solution to that, not a schnitzel. The animal products have higher B12, but the B12 that they have is made from bacteria that exists within them. It's a bacterial byproduct, B12, and the fermented byproduct of that is put in supplemental form. So we would recommend just taking a B12 supplement. That's far better than eating the saturated fat and all the other things that are found in that schnitzel over time. And so the animal products are not the good way to get B12. You're better off with a simple supplementation, enhancing the B vitamins of all the green material in the diet, and looking at whether that's related to a stressful event, changes in temperature. Sometimes there can be a drying out of tissue. She's living, I'm assuming, in Germany. The weather can be cold and brutal, even on lips and tissues on the outside. So there are different things that can be involved in that cracking. It can be B vitamins, but I would get those in the broad base of eating the plant-based foods that we're recommending.
Okay. Well, it's 6:01, Dr. Frank. We have 10 questions left that were previously submitted. We could either do one or two more, or we could end now and pick it up next week. It's up to you.
Well, we're going to have a whole other session, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we can cover those with everything else. So let's just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, these are long ones. I kind of was saving the long ones. Just
look them over, and then what we'll do is we're going to have one beautiful wrap-up Q&A, and we'll cover all of those things in that. That'll be great.
That sounds great. Well, thank you. And thank you guys for watching. Some people complained that you were freezing, and I apologize. I apologize.
I was freezing online? Oh, I didn't see it.
Some people were saying your video was freezing. The audio was perfect the whole way, but I apologize about that.
So they can hear everything.
No, they could hear everything, but what they don't understand
they just couldn't see my pretty face moving. Is that it?
I know. We could see your pretty face, but I guess for some people you were freezing. So I do apologize, guys. That's not. Technology is the way it is. Dr. Frank is in the same location he's always been, but it could be other people could be pulling from your Wi-Fi or things like that. So
and on my video, I didn't see any of that. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Okay.
As long as they had the audio, that's what's important.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see on the replay if you are frozen as well, because sometimes that stuff does correct. So we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much, Dr. Frank. And if you have any questions, please submit them by Sunday, because we need them at least 48 hours in advance for the wrap-up session. This has been a great course.
Everybody. Be well. Be well.
Thanks, Dr. Frank. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye. Okay.